well.
Yeah. I have the little guy down here that just had his fourth surgery in the last 3 years.
Wow.
He weighs 103 pounds.
All right. Yeah, our little dog is 10 pounds. That's quite the difference.
It's quite nice because you can, I was laughing because I was like, oh, I should ask so-and-so what she would do if she wanted to go to a horse show. And her dog was like, no, she would just stuff her dog in a carry-on bag and take it with her because it doesn't weigh anything. I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Look at all these wonderful people coming on. This is great. Welcome, everybody. Hey, Donkey.
Lots of people on here.
Lots of people. Hey, Karen. I hope it's not freezing up there where you are.
Got Lynn Davis from InterNow here, and Mandy Holm from Denim Marketing, and I see Brian Kennedy with BBC Builders. Hey, Brian. Who else is here? I just saw someone else pop up down here. Rich Robinson. I'm assuming the younger, not the older.
Or junior and senior,
or senior. Yeah, I don't know which way it is. It's just fun to pick on them. Oh, and our buddy Ben Marks is here.
Ben, how you doing? Oh, I see Kristen that I just spent yesterday with. Hey, Kristen.
So she's spending more time with you?
She's spending more time with me. Apparently yesterday didn't do her in. Yeah, lots of great familiar names here. Wow, this is fun. Hey, everybody. I hope
we even have
staying safe.
Comments in the chat already. We've got a hello from South Dakota. 50 degrees today, Karen says.
Then Karen's she's in flip-flops if it's 50 degrees up there.
I don't even know what the temperature here is. It was 50 this morning and I thought it was cold. So let's see what it is now. 70,
it's in the 80s here. So, but at least we're not having a tropical storm Ada. So
71. Balmy 71 in Atlanta.
61 in Baltimore. Whew.
Feels like football weather in DC.
Does it?
Yeah.
Is everything already turning brown in DC, or is it still green?
The leaves actually this past weekend they started really falling off. It's pretty, yeah, but just need more football.
Well, Watertown, South Dakota, 36. Oh, Birch. Yeah, you guys are freezing me, so we're nowhere near that.
No, thank you. I'll stay here in the South. I'll come visit you when it's warmer.
Yeah, and safer. So, let's see. Yeah, nice and sunny in South Florida. Absolutely. Well, we are a couple minutes past, so I think we should probably kick things off. So it looks like we're still going to have people jumping on, and that's just fine. We are recording. So welcome back to 2020 Vision. It's a game changer because it's 2020, and it certainly has been. I mean, who the heck knows what's going to happen next? But we're here to try, and we brought the best crystal ball that we could come up with. So we have, I want to call him Sir Robert Dietz instead of Dr. Robert Dietz. So from NAHB joining us, the chief economist. So we'll kick things off here. And Carol, let's start with you and have you do intros for the two people on the call, maybe who haven't met you.
Well, I'm Carol Morgan. I'm founder and president of Denim Marketing, located here in sunny Cartersville, Georgia. You all know that Georgia is the wild, wild west. So I don't know how much I'm talking about that today, but I guess like lots of places in the country, our numbers are headed up for COVID, which is interesting. But I have a very good friend who works at one of the local hospitals, and one of the hospitals' numbers are the lowest they've been all year. So who knows? It's just, no prediction. We do everything for our clients, from blogging, social media, public relations, promotions, lots of digital advertising. If you have questions about 2021, give me a shout.
So fantastic. And I am, of course, Kimberly Mackey. I am coming to you from Tampa, Florida, and I am the founder of New Home Solutions Consulting. What I do is I am a sales and marketing management consultant. I'm the person who comes in and puts all the parts and pieces together so that sales becomes the engine that drives the train rather than running it off the tracks. So that's what I like to say I do. So if you are curious about sales process, sales training, then certainly reach out to me. I would love to help you. So, and here is how to reach me. And then, of course, without further ado, we have Robert Dietz, PhD, who is the chief economist of NAHB, where he leads a team of 12 economists. His responsibility include forecast of housing and economic trends, survey research, and home building industry and policy analysis. So Dr. Dietz has published academic research in the private and social benefits of home ownership, I can speak, federal tax expenditure estimation, and other housing and tax issues. He's testified before the House Ways and Means Committee, the Senate Finance Committee, and the Senate Banking Subcommittee on Economic Policy on housing, economic, and tax issues. Prior to joining NAHB in 2005, Robert worked as an economist for the Congressional Joint Committee on Taxation. He is a native of Dayton, Ohio, and earned a PhD in economics from Ohio State University in 2003. Go Buckeyes, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honor to have you here.
Yeah. Thank you, Kimberly and Carol. It's really good to be able to join you today. I'm going to give you our current kind of look at the housing market and the building market. I'm talking to you from considerably colder Washington, D.C., where the two of you are, but housing has been the bright spot of the economy. Look, as a forecaster, we have to admit what we got wrong at the start of this year. Certainly when we put out our forecast at the IBS, an in-person IBS at the start of the year, we were thinking that this would be a good year. And in fact, the data has actually turned out stronger, which is really remarkable given that we've gone through a recession produced by COVID lockdowns and the public health crisis. So, if we've been looking recently at, trying to gauge the strength of the housing market, because I think one of the key questions is really how much of this is temporary and how much of it is going to persist for quite a while. In terms of the real-time data, there's three historic signals right now in terms of the strength of housing. One is that builder confidence on the NAHB Wells Fargo HMI is at a level of 85. This is an all-time high going back to 1986. And it's really being driven by the fact that builders are just seeing unprecedented amounts of traffic. It's being driven by interest rates and some shift in the geography of where people want to live. I'll give you some maps that kind of illustrate that. But right now we've got sales outpacing single-family production. And so construction should continue as we move into the new year. In terms of the resale versus the new market, another historic signal is the fact that the typical price of a resale single-family home right now is higher than the typical price of a newly built home. And I know we were talking before we got online about issues with appraisals and cost considerations, but this is really remarkable. And it speaks to the lack of inventory that exists there in the resale market, that home building has underbuilt for the last decade, leaving us a deficit of probably about 1 million homes that we need to make up, and we will do so over the next 5 years. But the result is that home prices, which were expected to go down by 5 or 8% this year because of elevated unemployment, the most recent readings of home price growth is up 12% year over year. And that's just incredible at a national basis. So we've got the largest ever gap right now between new home sales and production. Now, in terms of the macro view, we always kind of give a view of the GDP, good measure of the overall economy. Second quarter was the worst quarter the U.S. economy's had since World War II. But it was followed by the third quarter, which in some ways was the best. And you can see this big decline and then this big rebound. It's basically the disruption effects, the shutting down the U.S. economy. On net, it means that we're probably going to see the U.S. economy in 2020 be about 3.6% smaller than it was in 2019. We'll get some of that back in 2021. We've reduced our growth forecast, by the way, in 2021 and 2022 due to the election. Maybe we could talk about that in Q&A. But we're looking at about a little less than 3% growth in 21 and 2022. So we'll see these gains going forward, and that should help support housing demand. Now, we haven't given a name yet for the events of the 2020. I'm pushing for the Great Disruption, but I think I'm losing among my fellow economists. That's all right. But a good example of what we're going through, and it's an analogy of what we're seeing in the housing market, is to take a look at restaurant sales and grocery store sales. They're both pretty stable patterns of consumption. And you can see actually in 2015, restaurants got up above grocery store sales. People were eating out more. And then we enter into 2020, restaurant sales go down 50%. You can see that red line going down very quickly. And I think we all know what going to a grocery store was like in March and April. And so you can see that surge in grocery store sales. And now we're seeing the healing effects. So grocery store sales have come down, but they're still higher than restaurant sales, which are recovering. And I think, unfortunately, are probably going to face a tough winter, particularly if we see some renewed lockdowns. But that's a good example of the disruption and then the healing and then some permanent disruption effects that are going to affect a particular subsector. And we see that in terms of housing. Now, clearly the thing that's driving the strength in housing demand are historically low interest rates. I mean, just look at what rates have done on the 30-year fixed rate mortgage since 1990. I mean, if we included this all the way back to the late 70s, these rates would go up to 18%. We do think that the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, which is below 3% right now, is supporting housing demand. It's probably going to go up over the next 2 years, but it's going to remain below 4%. So the good news, bad news on that is good. It's going to remain historically low. The bad is that buyers are really sensitive to changes of interest rates. And so if you're a little bit concerned about what buyers are going to do over the next 18 months, think back to 2013. So take a look at this slide in terms of 2013. You can see that the 10-year treasury and mortgage rates kind of take a jump up by about 80 basis points. We saw sales stall back during that period. That was the taper tantrum. It was back when the Federal Reserve kind of said, we're going to pull back on some of the support we're giving the economy. And rates jumped up and buyers did go kind of on strike for about 3 or 4 months. So I don't think we're going to see, year-long pullbacks in housing demand, but be prepared for some stop and start choppy conditions as we move into 2021. And the reason I mention that, the vaccine is going to be the primary economic variable of 2021. And if we get one that's mass deployed, and I think we will, and it's in our forecast, expect interest rates to kind of jump up with each step along the vaccine process, because as we get a vaccine, parts of the economy that are currently closed will open up. And when they open up, rates will go up a little bit. So watch that in terms of buyer behavior. I mentioned the fact that sales are outpacing starts. This is some new research that we put out a few weeks ago. We adjusted the single family starts data to basically create an apples to apples comparison. Basically, you're just looking at the blue line as single family construction of just for sale inventory. So no custom, no single family built for rent. And look at the gap at the very end of this slide between the red line and the blue line. Sales are way outpacing single family starts. So builders are selling homes that they haven't even started construction on. And that is a problem because we know we've gone through lumber issues, material availability issues. What it suggests is 2 things. Single family starts should continue to grow to build out homes where contracts are already been taken out. But we could see a little bit of slowing in terms of single family sales to allow construction to catch up. And I mentioned building materials, lumber pricing. We can offer some good news here. I mean, lumber pricing in 2020 makes the roller coaster ride that we went on in 2018 look small. Lumber pricing actually peaked up at almost $1,000 per 1,000 board feet. It was the fastest run up in lumber pricing in 70 years. Now, this was a big NAHB advocacy issue, and I think through some efforts and maybe some potential good news in terms of domestic lumber production, pricing's headed in the right direction. But if you talk to builders right now, it's not just lumber, it's OSB, other kinds of materials. It's taking longer to build homes. So to buyers, they need to be patient. They need to understand that the production process is going to be more costly as we move forward. Costs are going to go up, and it is taking longer than it used to be. But if you put all that together, builder confidence, as I said at the beginning, all-time high. And it's pointing to the fact that we should continue to see additional gains in single-family construction. And the reason for that is the geography of where we're building homes is really shifting out to these low-density markets. So the graph or the map you're looking at here represents the core counties. You can think of these as the close-in suburbs and the central business districts of large metros across the country. So you've got Tampa's there, Atlanta's there, Columbus, Ohio, places that have a more than 1 million population. 18% of single family construction occur in these counties in blue. And in the second quarter of 2020, they were down 17% year over year. These are the highest density areas, and they had the worst performance in terms of home building. Now, what we should see is that as we move out into the lower density areas, that growth rate should improve. So let's take a step out. Now we're looking at suburban counties of those large metros. They represent about a quarter of national production of single family homes, and not down 17%, but down 9%. So we took a step out in density, the performance went up. Now, if we take another step out, now we're in the exurbs, the outlying suburban counties of those large metros. It's down a little bit less than 9%, kind of similar to the inner suburbs, but a little bit better. And if we take another step out, now we're in the small metro core counties. This is actually the biggest building region that we track on my team. It's about 30% of single family starts. And you can see lower density, now down just negative 5.9%, so better performance. And in fact, if we take the final step out, we're now in the outer suburbs of these small metros, 9% of single family starts. And in the second quarter, these areas were actually up. They were up in the worst quarter we'd had since World War II. And it shows that basically people are looking, because of telecommuting, to move further out. And if they're moving out, it means that they're going to areas where home building is a greater source of supply. And that's the reason that we see some of the gains in the traffic numbers that are driving builder confidence. So if we put all that together in terms of the outlook, we think single family starts are going to continue to grow into 2021 and 2022, but at a slowing rate. This year's rate was a catch-up factor due to the spring and the changes due to interest rates. Apartment construction is going to slow down. We're going to see declines in 2021. It should stabilize in 2022, but we're going to see a lot of declines in hyper-dense markets like New York and San Francisco, particularly if those markets go into a renewed lockdown, which is possible this winter. Remodeling should continue to be strong. We're real focused on housing, improving the housing stock, adding a Zoom room, adding a home office. All those factors are helping to drive remodeling. And as a result, that importance of housing, home price growth continues. It's much stronger than what we expected even 6 months ago. But here's the risk. Higher prices and some potential small gains in interest rates will price out some buyers from the market. So we're going to be talking about pricing out a lot in 2021. And then just finally, the real important factor is trying to distinguish for your clients, for builders, temporary trends versus permanent trends. The geography one is a good example. And so is the restaurant, grocery store example I gave you at the beginning. Yes, the magnitude of some of these things is temporary. Some of these things will roll back after a vaccine, but I think we've experienced some permanent changes, and we're experiencing one of them right now. People are going to telecommute more. They're going to use these Zoom meetings as much as we would love to be in person, but that is going to leave permanent impacts on how we use real estate and real estate values. And generally speaking, it should be good for home building over the next 5 to 10 years.
Thank you very much. Can you share with us, there's a statistic that I've heard you say several times, for every $1,000 of price increase, how much do we price people? How many people are then priced out of the home buying experience?
Yeah, if you took a look at the current demographics of the country and their incomes, for every $1,000 increase in the price of a newly built single family home, and that could be lumber, it could be appliances, it could be regulatory costs and fees, you price out about just under 160,000 households from being able to qualify for a mortgage to buy that newly built home. And that's a number, you're anticipating, I think, from an advocacy perspective, industry information perspective, we're going to be talking about that a lot in 2021. And frankly, it's going to be a way to distinguish the markets that have high degree of pricing out because they're already unaffordable are going to suffer in comparison to relatively more affordable markets. So we know the Southeast, we know the mountain states, and I would add even in some of the Midwest states that have been kind of flat for recent years, those affordable markets are going to see gains, and they're going to come at the cost of some of these hyper-dense markets like New York and San Francisco.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. And of course, before the call, we were talking about appraisal issues. And a lot of that because of pricing rapidly intensifying. So are you seeing that across the country? And
it's showing up in surveys. In fact, the conversation we had, kind of leading in, appraisals land and lot availability, and then of course the long-term challenge of getting skilled labor. But yeah, particularly with appraisals, because we know pricing is going to go up. We saw it early with lumber, it is spreading to other building materials. I don't think you can overstate the degree to which global supply chains have been disrupted. And so whether it's kitchen cabinets or sealants or windows and doors, all these factors, it's going to be a little bit different in every single market. But with gains in remodeling, gains in single family construction, it's economics 101, and you could see it clearly in the lumber pricing, which means appraisers then are going to have to recognize that it costs more to build these homes. And so, you're going to have to do your homework in this kind of market. And of course, that's why we like to put this kind of data out.
Well, it's not only the price increase too, it's the time, which of course time is money, because it's taking forever. I bought a refrigerator 6 weeks ago that just got delivered.
I live in a townhouse community outside Washington, D.C. We were supposed to have our fences replaced for the community. 4 months ago, they put it on hold because of lumber prices. Yeah, I think everyone's got a story just like that.
Yeah, lighting, you can't get lighting right now. It's taking forever. Home Depot, just going to Home Depot and the whole lighting section is just decimated, just for ceiling fans. And, it's taking 3 or 4 weeks just to order them.
It is, and we're going to have to rebuild some of those supply chains. So it's going to require some patience on remodeling customers, on new home buyers. But as long as those low interest rates are there, we think that even with some cost factors, we should be able to support this level of demand.
Yeah, and do you see the interest rates going? You don't see them going up significantly or rapidly. It's going to be even if they started on January 1 raising interest rates, it would take them years to get them.
And here's the thing. So the Federal Reserve, and we take the NAHB senior officer team to meet with the Fed on a regular basis, is one of my responsibilities here in the econ department is advocating there at the Fed. Jim Tobin and Jerry Howard are Capitol Hill in the White House. They are not thinking about raising interest rates until the earliest 2023.
Oh, wow.
So rates could go up because market forces, growth expectations, good news is bad news, could occur next year. But from a policy perspective, they're going to keep rates low. And the reason why is Chairman Powell, who's the Fed chair, has basically said he's prepared to let the economy run a little bit hotter, get a little bit of inflation. And we'll see that in 21 and 22, not 1970s levels of inflation, but a little bit of inflation, because he wants the labor market to heal. We had a fantastic labor market before this recession. 3.5% unemployment, the lowest unemployment rates on record for a variety of different minority groups. But the virus and shutting down the economy had big impacts. And one of the places where you see it, by the way, is big declines in the labor force participation rate. It went from 63% to 61%. And the reason for that, schools not being open. Someone's got to stay home with a lot of these kids. And the result is people left the labor market. So there's a lot of things we need to do to heal the labor market. And I think the Federal Reserve is going to be an ally in that process.
Yeah, women disproportionately leaving the labor market because of childcare.
Right, and then that has follow-on effects. And you see that in the service sector and places where things are reopening. The skilled labor shortage, the middle skills crisis continues. And I think one of the things that maybe we could see in terms of a bipartisan policy angle within Washington, D.C. in early 2021 is potentially an infrastructure bill. And an argument that I've made is if we have a large infrastructure package, a significant share of it needs to be dedicated to workforce development. Bring people in the labor market, train them for those jobs that need to be filled. It's not enough to just throw money at shovel-ready projects. We learned that a long time ago.
Yeah, I agree. Carol, there's some questions.
Well, I have a question. Talk a little bit about lot supply. I mean, I know in the Atlanta area, we are completely out of legacy lots, except for in the far, far hinterland, exurbs, we might still have a very few pipe farms if we can get people to drive that far, which is questionable. But what do we need to do as an industry to overcome our lack of lots?
It's an advocacy challenge. I mean, in the short run, it's about supporting the land developers, making sure credit's available. These are all the market explanations. But earlier this morning, I did a presentation for the Portland HBA. They have urban growth boundaries. There's literally legislative land that cannot be developed. So it's working at the state and local level. This is why it's really important to belong to a local Home Builders Association, or BIA, and get engaged in those efforts, because as you said, the demand is strong, and we're running out of lots in some of these really hot markets. We should have 2 to 3 year supply of lots in some markets, and you just don't have that right now. So
Right.
credit, and then the laws that allow land development to take place. And I walked you through those maps. There are going to be markets that are going to grow and have their tax base grow and have businesses locate, and there's markets that will stagnate, and it's
Oh,
going to
absolutely.
be on regulatory burdens.
Yeah.
And
I
there may
work,
be a shift too for like the commercial, some of the commercial, like the malls and things that are not going to survive this, to
Yeah,
repurpose those and turn them into something else. And
that's exactly right.
absolutely. Yep.
We think that probably a third of shopping malls will ultimately fail over the next 2 to 3 years. Some of that was going to happen anyway. So this is
Right.
everything with the virus is acceleration of existing trends. But I love the term repurposing, because that was the plan, right? Some of these shopping malls were going to be turned into urban villages with low-rise apartments and townhouses for that entry-level buyer that we need to build houses for. The challenge is zoning. You got to get the zoning changes. And so if communities say, well, yes, we have a dying shopping mall, but we don't want to do anything with it because we're afraid of traffic,
Right.
you're going to build, you're not going to grow your tax base, and your schools are going to stagnate.
Yeah, we definitely see some of that. In Atlanta, it can take 18 months from the time you're even looking at the dirt to get it zoned and be able to turn a shovel in it, compared to places like Huntsville, Alabama, where you could be 3 months away from development from the time you buy it. So, so it's kind of easy to see what's going to grow and what's not when you look at that.
well, or Arizona, where it could be 3 years.
Yeah.
I was going to say in Hawaii, it could be 20 years.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
We do have some questions here from Lynn Davis. Biden talked about a $15,000 down payment assistance program. Do you see that coming through in 2021? And then she says, given that Biden becomes president.
Right. So I'll leave that to Jim Tobin on the political side. But
Exactly.
yeah, on that buyer credit, I mean, let's go back in time to 2008, 2007. So before I became NAHB chief economist in 2015, and this, by the way, this is my 15th anniversary at NAHB. Wow,
month. Congratulations.
Congrats.
I had a lot more hair when I started.
I'm sure.
And no wife and no twins. And yeah, so, but one of the big issues that I worked on in 2008, 2009, I was the tax economist under Dave Siders and Dave Crow. And one of my big legacy projects was the homebuyer tax credit in 2008, 2009. We had 3 different versions of it. NAHB was instrumental in getting that first version of it in there in Section 36 of the tax code. I still remember working on it. And Biden's $15,000 advanceable tax credit for first-time buyers is basically that tax credit from 2008 brought forward in the future.
Excellent.
Whether it could be enacted law, I think depends a lot on politics. It depends on what the next stimulus bill efforts will be. I will say this as somebody who has a lot of almost like pride of authorship in terms of that original version of the tax credit. What we have right now is a supply problem, not a demand problem. Back then, it was a demand side problem. We needed buyers to stop the home price declines and bring everybody in, because they were, nobody wanted to be the first mover in to, catch the falling knife in the Wall Street cliche. The problem now is supply. So, I think that's an interesting proposal. It would certainly have some benefits for home building and for housing demand and the resale market. But if we have scarce resources to dedicate to housing, I think it gets back to what we were talking about in terms of land and lots, developing the labor force. We need resources on the supply side to help the construction side and solve the supply problems. And we have a deficit of housing in the United States, probably by 1 million units.
I guess we can't sell what we don't have.
Right.
No,
That could be the risk in 2021.
Yeah.
That sales could, if in some of my forecast slides, you get this kind of little peak over and that drops a little bit and then goes back to trend. It's reaching equilibrium based on the fact that we've got to build what we sell.
Yeah. We have another question. I'm sorry, from Brian. I can't read his whole last name. But he says, didn't Dr. Dietz say interest rates were going to go up when the vaccine comes out? Then said the Fed wasn't expected to raise them until 2023. Which is it?
So both. That's great. You're catching the details. So the Fed controls what's called the Fed funds rate. And you can think of it as the very, very, very short-term interest rate that controls the amount of money supply. The 10-year Treasury and the 30-year fixed rates are set by markets, not by the government, right? We have a free market economy. In China, the government sets all the interest rates. So the Fed is going to hold the Fed funds rate very low, basically zero for years, which presents a very accommodative environment for market rates to be set. Market rates are set on supply and demand. So when growth goes up, like if we get a vaccine and you get more economic growth, the travel and tourism industries come online, growth expectations go up, the demand for lending goes up, and interest rates are the price of that lending. So basically, if you get more growth, interest rates would go higher. The fact that the Fed is going to keep the Fed funds rate means that they wouldn't go higher still. So it is both. But, I think you need to keep the eye on the prize, which is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage for the next 2 years is going to be under 4%.
So yeah, and I was very fortunate. So I guess I just bought at the right time. Even selling a home during a pandemic, there was almost no supply here in Tampa. So we were able to sell high and then get the interest rates low and get in before all the crazy price increases because we built. So we locked in our price. So lucked out there, I guess. Let's hope the trend continues.
Good timing, but even for buyers, over the next 6 to 8 months, keep in mind historically low interest rates. They may be a little bit higher, but if you ask somebody that bought a home in 1978, they would laugh about the idea of, I'm going to quibble over a 3.1% 30-year fixed rate mortgage.
Well, we saw that a little bit at the end of last year, 2019, where interest rates ticked up just ever so slightly to like 3.5. They still were under 4 or just hovering right around 4. And then we saw the market just kind of stalled out for about 6 weeks until we lowered the interest rates again.
And in 2018, the Fed was too aggressive. They increased rates. We had the tax reform bill, which increased growth. So now you got the monetary policy increasing rates. You have fiscal policy interest rates. And a 30-year fixed rate mortgage got to 4.9%. And it really did stall the market into early 2019. So we think once you get above 4.5%, you kind of get into it's not a red light. It's kind of more of a yellow light where things get a little more cautious. I don't think we're going to get that high, at least for the next 2 years.
Good news. Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions? Now is your time. You have, as I said, the crystal ball, or the best crystal ball we could get.
They're all cloudy these days.
They are very cloudy. Maybe we should address the elephant in the room. So, and talk about, what do you think, given, let's assume that we will have a traditional, whatever that means, handoff in the election. What do you think that means for housing? I know you don't want to go too far into Mr. Tobin's territory.
Yeah. No, I think if you think about it in terms of monetary policy, legislative policy, Congress, and regulatory policy, there are places where we're going to benefit in housing, and there are some definite risks in terms of a change over the White House. A lot is going to depend, Carol, on the Georgia Senate elections. I think we are going to have.
No, we've got 2 of them.
Yeah, Jerry and Jerry Howard and Jim Tobin talked about this on their most recent podcast. These could be the most expensive Senate elections in American history, because it will determine and control the Senate, whether or not Mitch McConnell is the majority leader acting as a brake with divided government. And without tipping, politics, I'll tell you, economists in general love divided government, because divided government's a way you filter out bad ideas. That's our bias. But I think on monetary policy, the Federal Reserve is an ally. Monetary policy is going to be helpful. Legislative policy, congressional actions, it's going to be tough to get things done. So it's probably going to have to be bipartisan. So we're not overly worried about big tax hikes. It would frankly be nuts to raise taxes as we're recovering from this really sudden shock to the economy. It's regulatory policy where the risks are. So, depending on who's in the cabinet, so will we have Senator Bernie Sanders as the Secretary of Labor? And what regulatory policies will come out of that? What will that mean for things like Waters of the U.S. rule, which would expand the amount of land that would have to have a clean water permit, raising the cost of land development? What's the future of independent contractor status? What does that mean for builders, and the joint employer rule that was proposed in 2016 that could raise the cost of labor and help, prevent us from rehiring these people that need jobs right now? So I am worried about regulatory policy. And it is the reason that you need to be engaged I would say within the NAHB Federation, but if you belong to realtors or any of the other housing groups, get engaged, because regulatory policy is going to be the big fight over the next 2 years.
And we
Yeah,
have a
NAR just came out, actually, but basically said that same thing. So from their economics department, divided government is a good thing, they said, for real estate. So
yeah, and like I said, with the Federal Reserve, they are prepared to let the economy run a little hotter. Inflation should be about 2%. I think they'd let it get up to 3%. We're not talking about inflation of 10%, but when inflation picks up, it has two impacts. It tends to attract investment to real estate, because real estate's a great hedge. But it also raises nominal interest rates. So it gets a little complicated, but regulatory policy really is the risk going into next year.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions. Rich Robinson asks, when do you see lumber back to spring prices?
That's a great question. A hard one, Rich. So right now lumber pricing is at $550 or so per thousand board feet. It peaked out, real close to 1,000. So we're well down. The question is, when does it get back to, say, the high 300s or 400s? It probably doesn't. We have futures markets where people bet on prices in the future, and they say in the spring right now that maybe we'll get a little bit below $500 per thousand board feet. But as long as the demand for lumber, that is home building, is fairly strong, the price is going to be higher. One area where, there's a lot of different areas, but with the Trump administration potentially losing out to the Biden administration, we were hopeful that we'd see an increase in domestic lumber production. Changes, and God knows we need them, changes in forestry policy. So rather than having forest fires and have all that lumber burned, that we could, meaningfully and efficiently harvest forests to prevent the fires, but also provide materials for the homes that we need to build. I think that becomes a lot more challenging in a Biden administration.
Yeah. Rich says bummer and thank you. So
sorry, Rich.
Yeah, and I'm with you. It'd be much better to timber all of that and timber it smartly than to have it contribute to all those wildfires. And it definitely is a contribution. There's a cause and effect from when we stopped timbering and when the wildfires started. So, and that's not political, that's fact. So,
well, and anything that you do, if you do it within moderation, I mean,
yeah.
The Lorax didn't say don't chop down all the truffula trees. It said you can take some of the truffula trees, just don't take them all.
And European forestry experts have come to the United States and they say, what is this thing where you just close the forests off and leave them? You have to conserve and maintain them. That's what they do in Europe. And they don't have the forest fires that we have in Oregon and Washington and California.
Well, hopefully we will get smarter. We have another question here from Lillian Kinch saying, what state do you see people moving to the most in 2021?
Oh, good question. So on a per capita basis, so not, if we're talking just absolute counts, Florida and Texas, those are exactly. And I'm Georgia and the Carolinas, it's the Southeast, and I guess we'll count the, Texas. Got Texas A&M and the SEC, so the Southeast is kind of the high population growth region. But within the Pacific Census Division, kind of have to divide things in half. You have the coastal markets, which are flat, in some cases declining, except the inland parts. Then you have the mountain states, and on a percentage basis, it's those mountain states that have been growing and will continue to grow. And the reason why is if you're a, kind of an older millennial and you're trying to make a decision about, can I buy a home in a beautiful city like San Diego? I love San Diego. It's really expensive to live there. So then, I'll take a second look at Fort Collins or many of the communities in Utah or Boise, Idaho, which has had just incredible growth. I think those mountain states continue to see growth. And then on my, this sounds like a lock of the week, like I'm doing college football forecasting here, but if you're looking for a wild card, it's the Midwest. It's places along I-70 that kind of runs, roughly from Pittsburgh through Columbus, Ohio, Indianapolis, out to Kansas City. Those are really affordable markets where people maybe have the ability to telecommute or businesses looking to relocate somewhere a little cheaper. The Midwest has some potential to see some gains. But the Southeast, is really just the high growth area.
And that's interesting. Yeah, I know. And we've got clients on that corridor there, so that's good. So we had another question in here.
It was a price point question.
Yeah, and I think it scrolled too far for me. Hang
I've
on.
got it. What price
Okay.
points will be or continue to be the most in demand? I know there's been quite an increase in purchases of vacation homes, and many are cash purchases as well.
Yes, there was some excellent NAR data that came out this week. Actually, right before I logged on with you, I was on a little Economist powwow and got to talk to some of the NAR team on that. They had some great research showing the vacation home markets are up. And in about 4 or 5 weeks, NAHB is going to have some data on second home markets, and we're going to show home building is growing faster in second home markets. So,
Interesting.
it could be somebody, and all these examples are a little different, and you can easily take them to extremes, but somebody who maybe had been living in Charlotte and decides I'm halfway to retirement, I'm going to live in Wilmington, North Carolina. But price points, the sweet spot for new construction is kind of 275, kind of up to 375. The average is right around 300. We know it's going to go up. We know it's going to probably approach 350 next year. But it's the ability to kind of right there at the bottom, because that's where the entry level buyer, that millennial, leading edge of the millennials, is right around age 40, who maybe coming out through the vaccine and said, I put off a variety of different things. We paid down some of our student loans because we weren't spending money on travel, and now it's the time to buy a home and start a family. And they're looking for a kind of 2,400 square foot single family house on a small lot in an affordable area with good schools. And so if builders can build to that, and it's hard to do, I think that's going to be in high demand in 2021.
That's why townhomes have done so well here in Tampa.
Here too.
To hit those price points in those high demand areas. So exactly where I'm sitting. So, hot school district. And you're just seeing townhomes popping up left and right, and beautiful not inexpensive townhomes. So, the people are willing to invest in them because they know, to go into a single family home, you're in $700, $800 to $1 million.
That's what I live in a townhouse in southern Arlington County, real near the Pentagon. Townhouses in the DC area, that's how you get into the housing market, particularly when you have young kids like I do. And it's, eventually you move out to the single family attached, but builders can offer products in a variety of different geographic areas. And we think those markets kind of from the medium density inner suburbs on out to the exurbs are going to grow at the expense, unfortunately, of the urban cores.
Yeah, Carol says she lives in the exurbs. I'm like, you're just in the country, girlfriend. So Judy Donnell's asking if you see shipping getting better. So I supply side from other countries.
So that has been a challenge. That's a great question, Judy. For example, we only have anecdotal evidence on this, but it's building material products that made in South America, made in Chile, Argentina, sealants and windows and doors, literally just sitting on the dock, waiting for a boat to be at near 100% capacity so it can travel. And the result is it's delaying some of these products. I think it's going to take some time. Because look, we're going to get deployment of a vaccine in 2021. It's going to jumpstart us to herd immunity, and then we're going to feel maybe not completely normal, but close to normal. That's not going to be the way it's going to happen for the rest of the world. And by the way, this little rant here, but when people compare the U.S. data on the virus and make it sound like the U.S. is doing worse than the rest of the country, just because you measure something accurately doesn't mean you're the worst in it. The rest of the world is experiencing this. They just don't measure it the same way that we do. So keep that in mind. The rest of the world's got fundamental economic challenges with the virus as well. And it's going to take time to build those supply chains. And I'll just say, as an example, global airline flights, which I always think of as people and then luggage under the plane, a lot of those planes carried building materials. And so it wasn't just boats, it was also the fact that those commercial airline flights went away. And so all those supply chains just kind of tightened up. And it's probably going to take about 2 years for those supply chains to heal, and the logistics.
That is not the answer Judy wanted.
No, it's not the answer any of us wanted. So.
But it's an opportunity, I would say, it's an opportunity for producing those goods domestically, which is something the Trump administration wanted to accomplish anyway.
Well, and I think it would be good for, I think it's been a wake-up call for all of us. Every American, to see how much of what we consume was made overseas and completely inaccessible. So, hopefully we will see more manufacturing and more, people start up businesses and, produce things here in the States. I'd love to see that. And I think as a country, we, understand that that might cost us a little bit more, but look what it cost us to not have it all here.
I think that's right. And look, as an economist, I love free trade. I think free trade creates growth, but there's going to be some reckoning here, particularly between US and Chinese relations. And it could not only present growth opportunities for domestic manufacturers, but also for some developing countries that maybe we have better relations with.
So, in doing something about just having on demand, there are some things we should perhaps stockpile.
Right.
Like PPE, for instance, just saying. So Lynn Davis asked, is the hot build to rent activity going to siphon off a lot of homes that would normally be sold, or where we need homeowners in there? So, and then she's also asking how that trickles out into washers, dryers, all the other things.
So single family built for rent's really interesting right now. So historically it's been about 3% of single family construction. Right now it's about 5%. I will say there's a lot of people out there that make it sound like it's 20% of building. It's a smaller part of the market, but it's definitely got what we've been saying, a window of opportunity. There's some opportunity to gain. And it's for the reasons that we've talked about. That millennial household that maybe doesn't want to live in a 1,200 square foot apartment in downtown DC, but can't yet afford the down payment for a townhouse or a small single family housing in the suburbs, so they can rent. So I think there's some potential for opportunity. It does change the kind of housing being built. Single family built for rent tend to be townhouses. They tend to be smaller. They tend to be single story, which is kind of interesting. And then they either have younger households or like retiree type households. So there's kind of an interesting, you don't find a lot of Gen Xers doing single family built for rent. So I think in terms of the economic question of, are you siphoning off potential buyers? Sort of, but not to a meaningful extent, because those households that are renting, if they weren't renting, they probably wouldn't exist as an independent household. They would move in with their relatives, or they would double or triple up with roommates, or live with parents. And so providing that kind of single family rental housing just grows the number of households. I don't see it as meaningfully siphoning off people who ultimately want to become homeowners, because if they want to do that, unless they have to move very quickly, they're going to go buy a house.
Yeah. We have a good question here from Ben Marks. Will we see more acquisitions with larger builder groups buying smaller private builders? I think the answer to that is yes. We're seeing it here in Atlanta. We just had a big group come in and buy. Dan Ryan Builders bought Knight Homes here in Georgia. And Knight was, I think, our number 2 in the Atlanta market.
Yeah, that's been a trend for 20 years. It will continue. Some of those acquisitions are land plays, Carol, that gets back to where
absolutely. Yep.
There's a lot availability. Some of it is generational. Builders who have been in the industry for a long time that are, maybe their kids or nephews and nieces aren't interested in continuing the business, so they're going to sell it off. When we look at the top 20 builder share of single family starts at the national level, we've gone from about a 20% share about a decade ago to about a 29% share. That market concentration will continue, but that means more startups in these low density markets, because you don't have a lot of national builders in some of these really smaller towns where, if I'm right about the geography, there's potential for growth in those areas. And they're not big enough for some of these, kind of smaller markets.
Oh, I went too far. Sorry.
Right.
Trying to get us to our
So
our
we're
slides.
going to dive into the top 5 marketing recommendations for 2021. And Dr. Dietz already kind of teased this. COVID fast-tracked the trends we were already seeing. There are no huge surprises on this list. COVID was a force magnifier, is what I like to say. It took what was already working and made it explosive. And these trends are now must-haves. So, video and virtual, put more money there. Make sure you have video tours. Make sure you've got virtual tours. And yes, even if you're a custom builder, and yes, even if you're a remodeler, having something to keep them on your site and keep you in the consideration process is going to be key. Social media continues to be explosive. It is one of the most savvy ways to reach your target audience. It is stealthy. Use it, figure out retargeting, find ways to use that retargeting targeting through the Google tag or through the Facebook pixel, reaching those people who've already been to your site once and giving them more information is a great way to convert them into leads. Content is still a struggle for lots and lots and lots of builders out there. You need it. You need content for PR, for your blogs, for your website. Again, video and virtuals content too. So continue producing that content. If you can put more money into that for professional content, then do. Search engine optimization, again, a huge must. If you're not spending money there, you need to be. You're going to get more qualified leads from SEO, from that organic search, than you're going to from your pay-per-click or a lot of the other advertising alternatives. Technology, this trend is going to continue and to grow. So if you haven't invested in online chat, it's a good time to look at that, or a call system like CallRail, or on-demand access, like our friend Lynn Davis on the call offers through InterNow. All of those things are important to look at and to have on your must-have list for next year. And then other recommendations, these are kind of more must-have, tried and true. If you're not tracking, it's a great time to dive into tracking. I can tell you, I'll quote my friend Kevin Oakley. He says 10%, I think it's 10%, I might be correct. It might be $10,000, but I know he has a significant budget amount that's spent on looking into tracking. So if you're not tracking what you're doing, make sure you are. This is really where the rubber meets the road and tells you what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, what you should be doing more of. Your website is an investment. Continue to invest in it. New content, new visuals, update pages, use landing pages. I know a lot of times I hear from builders, oh, I just built a new website. Well, it doesn't matter. You're still supposed to have budget there. You've got to keep building it, just like you're going to continue building houses. It's got to be fresh. It's got to be trendy. You want people to stay and look at it. Listing services, continue to invest in the listing services. They're always going to show up first in your local search. So you want to be there so people can find you. Promotions, again, even if you're not giving anything away, maybe it's just a contest to get people to come out and see your new model home, and you're going to give them a gift certificate for the person who wins, random $250 gift certificate. Yes, that's giving something away, but it's not like giving away a free move-in package to everyone. So there's different things that you can do as far as promotions, just to stay, out there and have something to get in front of your, buyers with and stay ahead of the competition. And then finally, there's that must have that, signs, flags, balloons. I'll throw collateral in there. You have to have that. And it's got to be good, and it needs to be online also. As much as possible, your collateral should be downloadable. People don't necessarily want to take printed materials home with them, but if you can send them a link in an email, it's a great follow-up for them, and it gives them something they can look at home without having to touch the same piece of paper that you touched.
It also gives you the opportunity to get an actual email address instead of a fake one, maybe. So
exactly. Good point, Kimberly. So yeah, these are kind of this is my top 10 list. If you've got questions about any of them, you know how to find me, but what we saw that worked this year is going to continue to work, and now they expect it. So, if you think just because there's a vaccine coming out that you don't need to be doing virtual or video, then think again, because it's here to stay.
Well, and I'd like to go back to your number 4 point here about promotions. So promotions help you cut through the clutter. So if you're not offering what I call a traffic driving incentive, something to get people's attention, again, it doesn't have to be huge, but make it unique, make it special, allow it to help cut through. Think of it as for what it is. It's not a sales promotion so much as it is a marketing promotion to drive that traffic, so that your sales team gets the opportunity to get in front of these people. So whether it's virtual traffic or it's in-person traffic, either way, you're trying to drive it and offer those options for people. Make sure whatever incentive you're offering, make sure that you're offering both, because not everyone is comfortable coming out in person.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what community or what state you're in right now, and whether it's trending red or blue or whatever.
Yeah,
So.
and that's all over the place. You're absolutely right with that, Kimberly. And you can see, one couple comes into the sales center with their masks on, and the next couple comes in behind them with no masks on. So, and again, it's just individuals' level of comfort, and we've all got to be prepared to meet them where they are.
Yes, because we want them all.
That's right.
So, absolutely. So I'm going to give you my top 5 recommendations for the sales process based on what Robert is sharing with us. And, chime in here again, ask questions. We are getting close to the top of the hour, so I'm going to go pretty quickly, but you know how to reach me if you have questions on them. Budget as if our selling seasons will go back to a quote normal year. I don't know what a normal year looks like anymore, but we do know that we do have selling seasons. So, you understand that January is probably not going to look like June. So plan your budget accordingly, but have contingencies in place just in case it doesn't. And some of that may include price or sales pace control on whether it gets too hot. It may be, I think we're seeing a little bit of cooling, but I'm not sure how much of that is related to the fact that we just had the election and that was a bit distracting for people because I have seen traffic start to increase back this week. So it's like people are tired of talking about it. They're ready to go on with their lives. So I am hearing anecdotally that we're starting to see traffic increase again this week. But then we're going to go into the holidays, right? So there's going to be some swing. But sales pace control through throttling, think very carefully how you do it and have a plan for that, because raising prices too fast can create issues. Number one, you don't want to raise prices too fast, find you've gone too far, and we never want to go backwards. Remember 2007, 8, 9. Don't go backwards in pricing. So be very careful with that. I'm encouraging builders to even consider, an option. Basically, it's an option, but it's a you have to include it for lumber prices that then maybe can go away. So rather than raising your base prices, because we just don't want to create any more appraisal issues than are already out there. And you never want, that feeling that, oh, I bought too high and now homes are selling for far less in my community. Nothing can stop us all any faster than that. Consider doing limited releases so you can control your risk. So instead of opening up 10, 12, 15 home sites at a time, maybe consider that it's 5. Or 6, or if you have larger communities, instead of opening an entire pod at one time of 30 or 40 home sites, consider only opening 10. Keep those percentages small. You can do even flow selling through the 10-5-2-1 process. Chuck Shin and I used to have really good debates about whether or not it was possible to have even flow selling. But if you do follow the 10-5-2-1 process, you absolutely can. And what that really means in layman's terms is that you do what you need to do on a regular basis. You do it consistently, a little bit every day, every week, and that will create the sales. So the 10 is the number of traffic that you need to see. And for some people, it isn't 10. Some people only need to see 5 new traffic every week. 5 are the number of first appointments. 2 are the number of BBAC, second, third, fourth appointments, which will lead to 1 sale per week per salesperson. So if you're looking for your sales team to have 50 sales a year, this is the formula that they should be following. And that takes management. It takes accountability to get them there. It's not hard. It's super easy, actually, but it does take management. Like anything else, you don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect. Watch your margins. Don't let this erode your margins right now. Slow your pace if you're finding your margins eroding. But you can't shut off sales either, but do keep a very, we should not be building homes for practice at this moment in time. Track your sales conversion metrics in your CRM. So CRMs have to be managed. Sales managers, I'm sorry, I know it's numbers. It's not the fun stuff that we do. You got to get in there every week when you're doing your plan encounters with your sales team, and you've got to manage and make sure that your team is trained to put the data in so that we get good data out and we know what's working on the marketing side. We know what's working on our expenditure side. And motivational accountability is not an oxymoron. Your team will start to see that this stuff pays off for them individually, and they will actively participate, but it's going to take some time. You got to really have a process for that. And then consider adding a Realtor VIP program. Yes, even during a hot market, It keeps your name out there. We know the hot market's not going to last forever, but it more importantly allows you to work with those realtors with whom you have a positive relationship, not the ones that blow up the deals for you. So consider that. Map your handoff process at every point. This is something I've been hammering all year. If you don't have a handoff process for your customer journey that is mapped out and that every team member knows, you are really missing out. And in fact, throwing all of this technology on top of it is just magnifying it and shining a spotlight on it. So you can't, I call it putting lipstick on a pig. You can't just have great, sexy technology out there if you don't have the underlying process. Review your org chart to make sure you're optimizing your staff resources. And maybe you need to add people. Maybe this is the year that you need that OSC, that online sales counselor, to manage those leads as they are coming in so that you're maximizing them and you're not losing those longer term leads because your sales team is too busy to nurture them. And then review your technology. Does it support your process? Or does it just expose holes? So invest wisely. A lot of people, they hear the glitz and the glamour of the technology, but they don't realize how that's going to integrate with current systems and where those pitfalls might be. So get somebody who really understands technology to be part of the decision-making process. And so they can ask a lot of questions that maybe you didn't think to ask. I had a call yesterday with one of my clients who's considering a new system. And, you know, I mean, it was like poor, I kind of felt bad for the technology company, but, you know, we had a whole list of things to make sure that everything that we've worked so hard to create is not going to just, you know, instantly go away, and how that's all going to work. Assign somebody to be in charge, understand your ROI. Don't just get caught up in the sexiness of it all. And think about, if you think it's too expensive, could it replace traditional models? Because right now, you know, I don't know that we need to have as many traditional models as we should be having maybe online models and artificial intelligence and you know, all of these things with the virtual tours and VR. Those things can replace traditional models that you have to build every 2 years. And think about, how does it all enhance the customer experience? So that was a whole lot to unpack in a short amount of time. Carol, do we have some more questions happening?
I don't think so. I think we've answered them all. We've got a lot of thank yous. And Ben said that nice to see the two of us. Apparently he's missed us.
Hi, Ben. So be sure you join us next month on December 11th, because Lasso CRM does a sales and marketing roundup every year. And we're going to have a version of that live with, we're going to bring in some of the experts and some of the best of that. So this will be a really good rapid pace webinar on December 11th. So be sure you mark your calendar for that. And if you signed up for this one and signed up for the whole series, you'll be automatically registered for it, but do check back as we start to promote it too. So, and this is us. This is how you get a hold of us. If you have any questions, we're here to help you. Guys, you know, nobody has the complete crystal ball. We did the best we could with bringing in Dr. Robert Dietz, but we hope this helped you and gave you some ideas where your focus should be as you're starting to do your 2021 planning. Carol, any final thoughts? Oh, Dr. Dietz is still there. Hi.
He's still here with us. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I'm learning.
He was nodding along. So I
Oh,
guess what we said was dead on according to him. I think we feel like we get his seal of approval.
I'm up at 30,000 feet. It's really nice to see, you know, the kind of the grass tops here.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to 2021. I guess it's kind of funny. It has been a weird year, but I think we've all got to admit it hasn't been a terrible year. Who would have thought in March, when this all happened, that we'd be sitting here going, oh, poor us, we're running out of lots. We're up a bazillion % over even our projections. And, you know, we are a very blessed industry. You know, our last recession wasn't like this one. It was a lot scarier for us. And this one's been scary, and it's had its ups and downs. And I know it's been bad for some custom builders who've had homeowners who've put things on projects. But I think all in all, our industry has fared very well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what, you know, a little bit more normal looks like in 2021.
Yeah, here's to normal. Who would have thought? Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers to that. So Dr. Dietz, thank you again for joining us. I just can't tell you how honored we are to have you as a guest on the big show here today. So again, and good stuff. So again, anybody has any questions, just feel free to reach out to us and stay safe out there. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, but stay safe.
You
Bye,
guys next
everybody.
month. Bye.
Bye.